I'd say anybody that's a fan of classic 70s rock who hasn't checked these guys out need to. They're great.
I'll probably find plenty more reasons to shoehorn them into this, but I'll try to contain myself. Really one of my favorite bands, so they had to show up.
All right, speaking of the revival movements, let's talk about Circle, the album Sunrise. So this is a album by Circle. They're a band that Ian Anderson turned me on to, who I'm sure is probably listening to this at some point in the future. And I think the reason he told me to listen to them is that one of the guys in the band is in this old metal band. I think they're called Jester's Court. I did it on one of our old podcast episodes, but I can't remember what they're called. Jester's Tears, something like that. But he told me to check out Circle, and I was initially hesitant just because they have such a massive back catalog. They're so productive, but he told me to listen to this one, and there's another one that has a little bit more black metal influence that I listened to as well. I definitely need to listen to more of them, and this was a kick in the pants to revisit them a little bit.
Don't they have just one random straight death metal album?
Yeah, they did do the death metal album, but these guys also have 15 million side projects, aren't they? They're in that Antidote, is that what they're called?
Actor. Yeah, it's a pill on the cover.
A really great band, if you guys haven't heard them either. I think you might have told me this, but it's a Metal Talking Heads.
Yeah, Metal Devo is how it was first marketed to me. It's, ooh, yeah, gotta go with that.
Yeah, that's who I'm thinking of. Anyway, this is more of a krautrock revival deal, which I think is generally their speed. And obviously, it's sung in their native language, which I can't remember where they're from right now.
Finland, maybe? I'll double check.
Finland?
Yep, Finland.
So I don't remember any of it, but if you're a fan of krautrock and you live in the States, you're probably used to that anyway. I don't even really know where to go with this one. What do you think of it?
I guess the big disclaimer I have to put here is, for a guy who studied German in college, I'm pretty ignorant to krautrock as a whole. It's really a blind spot that I know I'm going to have to fill in, because anything I've heard that's been tagged that I ended up really liking. I know we're already planning down the road to just do a krautrock episode, and definitely look forward to that one, because I feel that's going to be a ton of fun getting through.
Yeah, I think we're going to start with kraut jazz.
Hey, I'm down for that.
Krautrock is a never-ending well of awesome shit. Pretty much anything that's tagged as a krautrock revival I love, which is weird. I'm not generally a big fan of revival movements as a whole, but krautrock is just so musically diverse that I feel like you can't really cover the same ground.
I almost feel like it's an unfair genre tag. They'll get these long jammy bands that are called krautrock, but Kraftwerk is called krautrock by some people, and that's just straight up electronic sequencers.
Yeah, that's what's fucked up about it, because you have Lucifer's Friend, who are just these brutal, for the time, heavy metal bordering bands. You also have stuff like the German Oak, which is just basically like a harsh noise, dark ambient album centered around like being in a bunker in World War II. And then you have like Kraftwerk. Then you have guys doing smooth jazz. You have your Emerson, Lake and Palmer ripoffs. It was just so musically diverse. So yeah, it's kind of like new wave of British heavy metal. It really describes more of a moment in time in a country than it does an actual genre.
It must be, if you were 70s and German, it was going to be thrown at you.
Jesters of Destiny is the band I was trying to think of.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, we listened to it on an episode. That's also an album I'd recommend to anybody out there. They're tagged as psychedelic heavy metal / hard rock, which I know maybe you're rolling your eyes out there because you can't spit without hitting a stoner rock band these days. But their first album came out in 1986, which was way before anybody was really doing that en masse. And it's pretty subtle psych influences, so that's also pretty unique, but we'll talk about that up some other time. I'm having some trouble describing the vibe of this album, but if you look at the album cover, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that album cover is the vibe.
But Circle, I think we'll probably be coming back to in the future.
Yeah. This one was a ton of fun getting through, and I'm definitely going to be looking forward to whatever else we can find from them.
All right, are we on to your last one then?
Yeah, and boy, is it going to be a shift in thought processes between those two. All right. Closing up, I have a very important album to me from the group I'd still consider my favorite. We got Duke by Genesis. 1980. People know, for the most part, Genesis. You have the prog days, you have the pop days, even though I think people who think Genesis completely sold out are completely missing a lot of evidence to the contrary, but I'm not here for that rant at the moment. I think Duke was the album where it really tipped, because they had a different album entirely written before Duke came out, which they scrapped because they thought they were just becoming a caricature of themselves. And even the album as it is, there are 6 tracks on it that were supposed to be just one massive sidelong song before they realized everybody's just going to compare it to Supper's Ready. Why would we do that to ourselves? And they moved on from there. But before I get to any other thoughts of mine, what's your take on Duke?
It's been a long time since I've done a Genesis run-through. Even longer since I've gone back to Duke. It's been a long time. Because I think I thought this was still probably part of their prog period. I didn't remember that Misunderstanding or Turn It Again was on this album. I gotta be honest, and I know a lot of prog heads are gonna hate me for this, but I'm probably a bigger fan of Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins' solo work than I am of Genesis. I think I did revisit Lamb Lies Down on Broadway a while back, which I guess made this one a little bit weird to jump right from that to this. But I think to your point that you were making there, it is really easy to just on a surface level to hear the singles on this and call it, oh, they sold out. But for a pop rock album, there is a lot of really progressive stuff going on here. The whole Duke's Travels End bit, that's not something you're going to hear on a Toto album. I should say a later Toto album, but more on that some other time. But it was fun going back to. It was fun revisiting with Genesis. I know you talked about doing a band and profile episode, and if we did one on Genesis, I think that'd be fun.
I'm already ready for that one.
Yeah, and I think if I listen to Duke in context with their other records, I might have a little bit more to say on it, but it's hard for me to think of anything right now. I'm also getting a little sleepy. Anything else you want to say about it?
Right. Yeah, I guess just to the point of not writing this off as one of their sellout albums, you brought up Turn It On Again. There's probably at least 9 time changes in that song. The main verse of it's in 13/8. And they still managed to make it a catchy song that was apparently a big hit in England. And it's funny to think of a song with that weird of a structure catching on. And just one more thought I had when we did our demo episode, which obviously nobody has heard. But we talked about some songs that are just great songs, but they're irrelevant in the modern day and age, like Operator by Jim Croce. You said on a more political level, a lot of the Bruce Springsteen songs where it's like, oh, that American dream is dead, isn't it? Turn It On Again's kind of the opposite because, boy, did that predict the entire paradigm of parasocial relationships. That song probably sounds a lot more contemporary now than it did when it came out 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of my favorite sort of subclasses of music is the 60s musician or early 70s musician kind of seeing the way the world's going and writing Money for Nothing, Turn It On Again, End of Innocence, The Pretender by Jackson Browne. Just all those kinds of songs. Lovers in a Dangerous Time by Bruce Cockburn. Those Mutually Assured Destruction ballads from that Cold War period. I think all those songs have a renewed sense of vigor these days, which is sad.
It's unfortunate, but good for the songs.
But I do gotta say, just because I feel a little guilty moving on from this so quickly, I did almost get into a fight with a friend because he was making fun of Phil Collins drumming on the Led Zeppelin reunion at Live Aid, which in his defense is a shitty show. But I do think there's this idea that Phil Collins isn't a great drummer.
Oh, that's totally wrong.
It's stupid. And I also think there's some people that think that, oh, why was he in the Led Zeppelin reunion? Completely forgetting that he worked with Robert Plant on all of his solo records, which are very weird albums, more so as he went into the 80s. And he's also part of the Honey Drippers, which was that Jimmy Page project that happened right after Zeppelin, which I think either John Paul Jones or Robert Plant was involved in. I don't know. I haven't listened to the Honey Drippers record in a long time.
I'm pretty sure Robert Plant was. I need to actually listen to that. I think I've heard this single and thought it was great, but never actually.
It's what you think it is, but it's fun.
Yeah, just throwback stuff.
But yeah, at Genesis, those dudes have always been masterclass musicians. Sellout or not, they're doing great shit. You just have to listen for a little bit more. And I think that's the kind of the takeaway from Genesis. Even at their most commercial, they're still Genesis. I think another point of comparison, I didn't know this isn't really going to win anybody over, but they kind of remind me of Ambrosia a bit, because they started as a Canterbury-influenced prog rock band.
We're going to have to talk about Ambrosia. I love that band. There's always something a little different to them. Not to drag this out, just to go back to your point, if you follow Peter Gabriel, he was going weird directions too. It was just in their blood.
Yeah, Gabriel's solo career isn't totally different from Plant's, which I would like to talk about some of those Robert Plant solo albums at some point, because I really think they're one of the best kept secrets of late 80s stuff, when he started basically turning into Talk Talk, who we'll need to talk about as well. But God, those are some good albums. Anyway, do you want to wrap it up and talk about Dead Reptile Shrine?
Boy, what a whiplash. Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, so this is my final pick. I am a big fan of avant-garde black metal. I like my black metal weird. I have a rant on that a little bit later. But this is one I wanted to pick. Again, I'm sorry for people that didn't listen to our old podcast that we keep referencing it.
It's still there for them to listen to.
But one of the last episodes we did was Outsider Black Metal, which is another point of pride for me because even though I think Don hated everything I made him listen to, I worked really hard to not pick anything that had more than one Rate Your Music review or 500 views on YouTube.
Yeah, any more than 2,000, it was out the door.
And so Dead Reptile Shrine did not quite make the cut because, and I know if you're an outsider and you're listening to this, you're going to be like, what the fuck? But it just wasn't quite weird enough for me. What'd you think of it? And then I'll go on my avant-garde black metal rant.
Man, I'm looking forward to that already. I followed Savior Machine with this, and I'm using the word a lot already, but Whiplash, I definitely need to re-listen to it on a better set of speakers, but it was definitely one of those albums where every track change, I would have to stop what I was doing, kind of look and think, what the hell are they on to now? But I mean that in the best possible way. I had no idea what to expect any given moment. Am I misremembering, or does it start out with just like tribal drumming and this very sparse, kind of woodsy feel?
Yeah, I think it might even be some field recordings in there of some bird song.
Yeah, and then to go into just raw, roughly produced black metal after several minutes of that. It won me over on creativity alone, if anything, but some good riffs in it too. Overall, impressed.
So the reason I picked this one, I'm a big fan of experimental black metal, and I guess one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this album is because I know black metal is going to come up a lot on the show, so I just kind of wanted to throw my chips on the table. I think I talked to you and our friend Max, who is probably another person that's going to come up on the show a lot, about how in early reviews of Hellhammer, they were sometimes considered as avant-garde, which might seem weird to people now because black metal is this established thing. But I think people forget, and it's the reason that I love black metal so much, is that initially it was created by these guys who either were trying to like emulate 80s thrash and just doing it badly. But then you also had your guys like Kronos, who it was an active rebellion against musical norms. I think maybe the best combination of those two ideals is maybe Parabellum from, I believe, Argentina. They become more known. We'll probably talk about them at some point. They're extremely weird and extremely limited in their recording ability. But see, that's what has always appealed to me about black metal, is in its purest form and when it's done right and not in a cradle of filth way. Although I think that stuff has its place too, is it really pushes the definition of what music is, because a lot of times it's not played correctly. It's played out of time, especially some of these bedroom projects. You have your bands like Vaughn who are singing into a microphone that's shoved into a dead rat carcass and that's recording the entire band. It's just a rejection of everything normal and expected about music, and that's why I like it, because I think it's almost, I know it's a cliche term, but it's almost Lovecraftian in nature, where it's just pushing the boundaries of our understanding, and people might be rolling their eyes out there at me thinking that, but it is truly how it makes me feel, especially with stuff like Dead Reptile Shrine, where they're throwing in these field recordings, these neo-folk acoustic guitars, and like just straight up walls of noise, and just completely, again, to use the word, whiplashing you back and forth between these musical extremes. I think black metal has always been a safe haven for these eccentric weirdos, and it makes me sad that black metal has become so irony poison that I don't think anybody can really appreciate the weirdness. It's become so much of a joke. But I do think there's a lot of really beautiful experimentation that happens in the genre, and it gives a voice to a lot of people that I don't think would have an outlet creatively otherwise. And I think Dead Reptile Shrine is just a great example of what those weirdos can do when given a little bit of slack.
Beautifully said. Yeah, definitely agree.
That'll do it for this episode. Next week, I'm going to be talking about Ashbury, Endless Skies, Bruce Hacks, The Electric Lucifer, Rigor Sardonicus, Rigor Ex Mortis, Sneaker by Sneaker, Songs Ohio, Magnolia Electric Company.
I'm going to have Electronic's debut album, Blue Notebooks by Max Richter, 618 by Coffin Worm, Brighter Than 1,000 Suns from Killing Joke, and Chapel of Diseases. And as we have seen the storm, we have embraced the eye.
All right, well, that'll do it for the first episode of Shuffle Repeat. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Bear with us. We just got to get our podcasting bearings again. If you have any suggestions, you can hit us up on Facebook. Right now, things will be at the Are You Morbid page. We do have a phone number that you can call and suggest things, give us feedback, call us a bunch of world-class queers, whatever you want to do, but I don't have that number handy. But just keep it in mind, I'll also probably get it set up with an email address, but I don't have that handy yet either, so I don't even really know why I'm bothering saying this.
Just know that it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. The show is all about music appreciation. If you have something that you want us to talk about, something you think we'd like, or if there's a subgenre or something that you want to hear. I guess that is the other thing we didn't talk about in the intro is in between these sort of random episodes of what we've been listening to, we're also going to be doing some obscure genre explorations. And I don't have that list handy either, but I'll give you some examples next time. But anyway, I think that's going to be it for us. I'm Zach.
I'm Ian.
And